Hey everybody, Wandering Pastor coming to you again today with part two of a series I started a couple days ago called How Should We Live? That is, if you are a believer in Jesus Christ, how should we be living in a world which clearly does not value that all that much, does not appreciate the complexity that goes into what it means to follow Jesus and how we live it out? And this world, our culture, our society, even some of your family and friends may not appreciate your faith and may, in fact, at times mock or attack your faith. And when that happens, the easiest thing in the world is to resort in the flesh and sort of lash out. But really, how should we be living? Because here's the reality. If you're a believer in Jesus Christ, you know that everything you do reflects upon Him. Everything you do, either gives Him glory and results in people giving Him praise or thanks or whatever, or it results in people saying, well, He must not be all that real because you believe in Him and you're acting the same way everybody else does. Now, if you're not a believer in Jesus Christ, you also know that you should be expecting some difference. You should anticipate that people who claim to follow Christ and claim to have a relationship with God should be different. And if you don't see that, I think it's legitimate to raise questions about why. Why is that true? And so I started this series, and I talked a lot about embracing humility as a lifestyle, as a mindset that we can continually embrace. And I want to encourage you to go back to, if you didn't see that, to go back and watch it. And you can find it at wanderingpastor.com. You can find all my podcasts and videos there, links to some books and so on. But I would encourage you to do that because it's important that we look at this in context, and then we'll have a podcast on Sunday that comes out and kind of wraps it all up in a more detailed way. But I want to talk to you about sort of what Jesus said about this and what the Scripture teaches us about this topic of integrity, and that's what I'm talking about today. How we should live is to live with integrity, to live in such a way that you are consistent, you're faithful, you are real, and people know that when you say something, you mean it. You're honest. You're not shading the truth or anything like that. And so here's where this comes from. In Matthew chapter 5, again, the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus was relaying a new kind of spiritual identity. That is a new kind of spiritual expectation. And he was contrasting it with everything they had been taught from the Pharisees and the religious leaders at the time. And one of the things he said was this. He said again in verse 33, chapter 5 of Matthew. Again, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not break your oath, but keep the oaths you have made to the Lord. But I tell you, do not swear at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, nor by the earth, for it is his footstool, nor by Jerusalem, for it's the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. Simply let your yes be yes and your no, no. Anything beyond that comes from the evil one. Now, what was he talking about there? And what's it mean for us today? Does it mean we can't take oaths in court and that kind of a thing? No, it doesn't mean that, I don't believe. But again, remember the context. He had said earlier, unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees, you have no part in the kingdom of heaven. And they would have heard that and thought, what? What hope is there? Because those guys are they're the professionals. What hope is there? But the Pharisees, you have to understand, even with oaths, they taught that there was a way to make an oath that was binding, and there was a way to make an oath that was not binding, that had loopholes. If you made an oath in public, and if you attached it to God in His name, then you were required, no matter what that oath was, to fulfill it. If you made an oath, but it wasn't attached to God's name, or it was in private, then you could get out of it. If you said, I swear by my mother's grave, or I swear by everything that is holy, or I swear by, whatever, there was wiggle room then, and you would not be held completely responsible. Now, other people might eventually realize, okay, I can't trust that guy in his oaths, but you wouldn't be held accountable if you used one of those kind of forms for oaths as opposed to using it attached to the name of God. What Jesus is saying is bag that stuff, forget that. behavior. Just knock that off. Let your yes be yes and your no, no. He's saying you need to be a person of integrity. You need to say what you mean and mean what you say and follow through so that people can depend on you and can know that you're going to do what you say. It reminded me, as I was thinking about this, it reminded me of Daniel. Daniel is a prophet in the Old Testament, and he was a young man when he was taken away from his homeland, Jerusalem, and he was taken by the Babylonians, as were a lot of other people, taken to Babylon when they overthrew Israel. And he was indoctrinated in the ways of Babylon, and yet he remained faithful to God. And as he actually continued to excel at the various roles that he was given in Babylon and then in Persia. And in one place we read in Daniel chapter 6 of how this came back on him in a way. So Daniel was a man of integrity, and he showed it, and he consistently served the king, even a foreign king, a godless foreign king over in Babylon. And Darius the Mede was actually going to put him in charge of much of the kingdom. And verse 4, at this, the administrators and the satraps tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel in his conduct and government affairs, but they could find none. They were unable to do so. They could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent. Neither corrupt nor negligent. Finally, these men said, we will never find any basis for charges against this man Daniel unless it has something to do with the law of his God. So they're looking for ways to charge him. They're looking for ways to make him look bad. They're looking for ways to bring him down a notch. And they can't find anything because he's a man of integrity. And it says he was trustworthy, neither corrupt nor negligent. He did what he was supposed to do. He didn't take bribes. He didn't cut corners. He did it, and he did it right. Why? Because he was doing it for the Lord. And he was doing it in connection with his relationship with God. And so they said, we got to find, if we're going to find anything, we got to go at his relationship with the Lord. So they came up with an idea, and they went to Darius and said, hey, Darius, we think you're the best, and we think everybody should pray only to you, and you should make it a law that everybody can only pray to you for a certain amount of time, and if anybody does, they're going to be thrown into the den of lions. Well, Darius was an arrogant leader. Darius was a king, a tyrant, and he liked that. And he didn't check with Daniel, the number 2 guy that he was going to put in place, but he just went ahead and signed this law in a way that bound him and everybody else to it. And sure enough, Daniel hears about the law. In verse 10, now when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home and upstairs to a room where the window opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to God, to Yahweh, just as he had done before. Daniel did not change his behavior. He didn't alter his worship and prayer to God at all. He continued to do it because that's who he was. He was a man of integrity. He was not a man of shiftiness. He was not a man who tried to play the schemes or the market or anything like that. He did what he was called to do, and he maintained it. Now, as you know, if you know the story, those guys found out about it, and they knew he would fall into their trap. They went and told Darius. Darius tried to figure out a way to get Daniel out of it because he liked Daniel, but he couldn't. So he had to throw him into the den of lions, and he said, may your God, who you continually serve, save you. But he thought he wouldn't. And so Darius spent the night trying to, couldn't sleep and all that kind of a thing. Dawn the next day, he runs to the lion's tomb, or the lion's den, and he says, Daniel, has your God, whom you continually serve, been able to save you? And Daniel said, yes, my God sent his angel, and he closed the mouths of the lions, and he protected me because I'm innocent. And so they raised Daniel up out of the pit, not a scratch on him. God had miraculously protected him from the den of the lions. Why? Because Daniel was a man of integrity and of faith, and he consistently did what God had told him to do. And it reminded me how today you and I don't face lions' dens, but we can face pressure to go back on our faith, to go back on some standard that we have because of our faith. Lots of pressure. It can come from family, it can come from friends, it can come from workplaces, right? And yet we're called to live this kind of faith and this kind of integrity and this kind of consistency and faithfulness out all the time in every place as an offering to God. And that reminded me of Colossians chapter 3. Colossians chapter 3 is a good chapter for those of us who want to follow Christ and want to do it with all areas of our lives. Let me just look at a couple verses, Colossians 3:23 and 24. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for men, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. So work at it as working for the Lord, not for men. And Paul's talking to slaves here, and he says, work this way, not just when your boss is watching, your master is watching, so that he'll give you a promotion or whatever, he'll give you a smile. But work at it this way because you're working for the Lord. Because like all areas of life, it is offered up to God. That you're living for His glory. You're living for Him. And that's what we're called to do. And so, brothers and sisters, if you're a follower of Christ, you're called to live with integrity, consistency, faithfulness in every area. If you're at some mundane factory job, if you're a homemaker, if you're a brain surgeon, it doesn't really matter what you are, you're called to live that way. And as we do so, people will notice. Now, some won't like it, some will try to bring you down like they did Daniel, but some will applaud and will be drawn to your integrity or to your faith by your integrity. And that's what we hope to be. So whether anybody else notices or not, it's really as an offering to God, isn't it? And that's how we're called to live. So I want to encourage you to do so and to do so consistently. It matters how we live. It matters to other people whether they will admit it or not. So, brothers and sisters, may God give you the strength, give you the vision, give you the focus to live with integrity in this day and age. Okay? Wandering Pastor saying peace. I hope you have a great day. Please go to my website, wanderingpastor.com. Check out all the videos and tune in Sunday for the podcast. All right? Thanks. See ya.